Welcome back, Survivor Pool fans. It's week one, and we're kicking off the season with the best analysis on YouTube to help you dominate your pools. Coming up next, it is Scratching and Surviving. All right, guys, we are back for another season of Scratching and Surviving. If you are new, welcome. For those of you who are coming back again, I appreciate you guys returning. We are going to be trying to take down Survivor pools, and I've got some of the best and most in-depth analysis probably out there on YouTube, anywhere that you're going to find these videos. We try to keep them 15 to 20 minutes. This one may be a little bit longer because it's week one. I want to get you guys a little familiar with how I do things. If you want to go back and look at some more in-depth videos on exactly how I go about Survivor pools, I'm going to put a link down below that you can go back and check out. And we're going to get into it pretty quickly here for week one. Now, you guys who have been with me before know I have got a spreadsheet, and I've added to that spreadsheet. I think it's going to be something interesting. We'll see how it goes and plays out as the year goes on. What you're looking at on the screen now is the Survivor Grid. Many of you may be familiar with it. I know you guys returning to this show from previous years are going to be familiar with the Survivor Grid. And I definitely want to dive into Survivor Grid right away. I think that gives us a good analysis. If you're unfamiliar with Survivor Grid, it's survivorgrid.com. Check that out. What they do over there is they're going to give you the P percentage, which is pick percentage, and that's based on all of the major sites, websites that give or have Survivor pools. And they've got that data, comes into them, and based on where people are picking right now, we can get the pick percentage on all of those pools. So that's going to be really close probably to your pool, depending on the rules in your pool. If you're picking 2 games this week, of course, these percentages are going to be different. But we could use it as a good start and a good foundation to what we're looking at for this week. The W percentage that you see there, that's the win percentage. Mine is going to be a little bit different on my sheet. I use the Sharp app, and guys, if you are unfamiliar with the Sharp app, give the Sharp app a download. I am one of the founding partners of the Sharp app, and if you are looking to become a better sports bettor, I definitely recommend the Sharp app. Head to sharp.app and download it today. You will not regret that, certainly with the NFL season starting and with NCAA football in full swing. We got the NBA coming up not too long from now. NHL, MLB is still going, WNBA. So we've got a lot going on at the Sharp app. Check that out. Now, but back to Survivor pools here and the Survivor Grid. You've got the EV number, and that is a calculation. I don't know exactly how Survivor Grid calculates it, but anything over 1 is giving us positive EV. That's expected value. Anything under 1 is giving us a negative EV, so to speak. And so really, according to Survivor Grid, the teams with the most EV, the highest EV number, are going to be advantageous. Now, that's according to their metrics. We'll go over this more in detail as we go along, and I'm going to get into my spreadsheet in a little bit. But let's just kind of go over the week here and what we're looking at as far as teams and who's being taken by how many people, so on and so forth. So we look at it, I kind of sorted this out by the pick percentage, that's the P percentage, and we see Cincinnati getting almost 42% of all entries right now are on Cincinnati. They're 9-point favorites, home against New England, so it's understandable. They are the largest favorite on the board this week. You've got Buffalo at 14% right now, 9.5% for the Saints. They are against Carolina, 4.5-point favorites, 6.5-point favorite for Buffalo. Seattle getting 8%. They're 5.5-point favorite with Denver. The Bears getting some love here at 4.5%, also a 4.5-point favorite. San Francisco getting 4% and a 5-point favorite. Let's talk about why Cincinnati is getting the amount of picks that they are, and certainly because that 2.5-point gap between them and Buffalo is fairly significant when we're looking at the top of the market. So Cincinnati, very unlikely, very much a safe pick. Now, I talk about with you guys when we're in small pools, we want to kind of stay with the safer picks typically, unless we knew or we know that the entire pool. Now, if you knew you had 10 people in your pool right now and you knew that maybe 8 of them were going to take Cincinnati, then you probably want to get off of Cincinnati. I'm going to go into that a little bit more detail when I get to the spreadsheet, something new that I've got on the spreadsheet. But that should be kind of intuitive to you, where the higher the percentage the team is being taken, the more apt you're going to be to want to fade them, because if they lose, of course, we're going to knock a lot of people out of the pool. If you're in a pool like I am, I'm in Circa this year. I'm in many other pools. So Circa, you got at least 10,000 entries in there. And if it goes in accordance with this, we're looking at 4,000 or so entries will be on Cincinnati. Now, that would be nice to knock out 4,000 people this week, and if you got on another team, to be able to get away from Cincinnati. But we're still big underdogs there. If that was the only team to lose, and we took Buffalo or New Orleans or one of these other teams and they won, and we only knocked 4,000 people out, maybe a couple other teams lose, and we knocked out 4,500 people, it's nice, great start. We're still a long ways away from winning. But if you were in, like I said, that 10-person pool, and 8 of them took Cincinnati, now we're in a different situation. So we want to, in small pools, take more chalky picks often, unless we know that other people are going to be on the less chalky picks. I like to, especially to start it out, if I don't know my opponents and I'm in a small pool, maybe staying a little bit chalky initially and then trying to feel my way through. Let other people take a riskier pick. You're going to wind up with, I mean, not too many people are in a survivor pool with just 10 people, but you're going to wind up, if you're in a pool with 50 people or so, there's going to be some people out there who are going to take, you're going to have one person in your pool probably take an underdog. You're going to have some people taking a 2.5 point favorite. Those are just crazy picks. Yes, one of them may be able to survive in advance and take some crazy picks early on, and then you're going to look back and say, oh, God, this guy took, Atlanta in week 1 against Pittsburgh, and he took Miami against Buffalo or something like that in week 2, some really odd picks, and was able to get deep. That is fine. Let them do that. You're going to eliminate a lot more people. You're not going to pay attention to the people who get knocked out taking wacky picks. You're only looking at the people at the end of the pool who take wacky picks. So again, we're in a small pool. We're going to try to stay a little conservative, especially early on. Now, if we're in a larger pool, aka like the Circa type of pool where we've got 10,000 entries in there, we really want to mix it up a little bit more. So Cincinnati becomes less, or at least not as obvious a choice. And I think you'll see a lot of people in Circa will get off of Cincinnati for that reason. We're going to start looking at some other teams. So let's kind of dive into that. Let's look at the other teams and the options. Let's look at future weeks. Another thing you guys know I preach, I don't like to look too far out into the future. We're going to look more out into the future. The larger the pool, the smaller the pool, the less out into the future you want to look. You always want to look at least 1 or 2 weeks out because you may have a better path, right? So if we're looking at this, let's just kind of look at it as an example. If you've got Cincinnati here as a 9-point favorite this week, next week at Kansas City, we're certainly not taking them next week at Kansas City, but there's a possibility here in week 3 we could come right back to Cincinnati. So if we hold Cincinnati off, the most optimal path may be to not play Cincinnati this week. Let's just look at the most optimal path. All teams are available. We're taking one team a week, let's assume, in your pool. The most optimal path, well, if we go, let's just take the favorites right now, the biggest favorites on the board. Cincinnati, if what Survivor Grid has is accurate, it would be Baltimore, and then it would be the Jets come week 3. Now, it's possible that we could, in future weeks when we have less options, when we look ahead maybe 3 weeks, this team that now where Cincinnati is like the second choice on the board, they may be our best option because of the way things are going to break out, right? But week 1 tends to be the easiest week. Not necessarily the easiest week to survive, but the easiest week in which to make a pick because we've got everyone available to us. So let's look now at deep future value here of Cincinnati. Actually, let's cut over to my spreadsheet and let's get into that. The spreadsheet is going to show you a few things, right? So we've got obviously the teams, the opponents, the money line. Now I'm basing this money line. This is a VIGless money line. If you don't understand what VIGless money line is or implied probabilities, we've got a lot of videos here at the Sharp app, and you could of course join our Discord as well. Always ask questions. But I take the VIGless line from the Sharp app, and I'm looking at that, converting it. This win probability is the implied probability based on that line. So we're looking at, of course, the highest probability of a team to win, being Cincinnati. The FV column is the future value. Now, the higher that number is, the less future value that team has. Now, I'm basing this off of Survivor Grid and what Survivor Grid has in the future as far as the point spread for each of these teams. So I'm ranking that point spread on a week-to-week basis. So the lower the rank of a team, the more points they're going to get. So if you have the 25th best point spread, right? So if the number one point spread this week and getting a value of 1 is going to be Cincinnati because they're a 9-point favorite. But if you are a team that's going to be +4, +5 in week 2, you may be the 23rd, 24th best option on the board. You're going to get 23 points for that, okay? So that should make some sense to you. That's future value. You see the best teams in the league, Kansas City, San Francisco, the teams that are projected to be favored more often than not and favored by a large margin. Those are going to be the teams that have a lot of future value. Why do we want to pay attention to that? Future value means we're going to be able to save these teams potentially for the future and get them in good spots when we may not have great options to play. Sometimes you want to take a team that's going to be a favorite with very little future value because that's the last time that they may be that big of a favorite. And we'll see this week that could be the case. Pick percentage, this is coming straight off of the Survivor Grid. And then what you have here is unique teams, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This is just a guide in my spreadsheet based on if you're playing a lot of options. Now, I've got this, if you look down on the bottom here, FV weight, I've got it at 25% right now. My entries, I've got 100. Now, this can all change. These are all variables here that are going to change how the spreadsheet is being calculated. So if I put this down to 0 and I leave it at 100, this 10,000 doesn't really matter for what we're looking at as far as the overall how many picks. It will come into play kind of behind the scenes on some other stuff that I look at. But what we're really concerned is how many picks you have. So if you're in a pool, you took 20 entries in that pool, you may be looking at something like this. Now, the 0% means we're weighing future value at 0%, meaning we really don't care what future value, how much we weight the future value. We only care about this week. Typically, no matter how small a pool it is, I'm going to want some future value early on. We've got 18 weeks to get this thing done. So if I was in a small pool, I'd probably be looking at this at 25%. So the small pool is still telling you that the better option here, if I had 20 entries and I was going to split it between 2, I'd put more entries in on Cincinnati. Now, the second choice it's giving me is Seattle. Why? Because of this number. This is one of the largest numbers for the favorites. Minnesota has the largest number as a favorite this week, and Seattle would be second. If we go back and we look at Seattle's teams that they have coming up, you could see why, right? So we look at the line for Seattle. I mean, at New England, not a very big favorite. They're going to be a dog to Miami. They're a dog to Detroit. They're going to be a small favorite against the Giants. Could be a bigger favorite than we think in this game, right? So this may be a little light, 3.5. We'll see. It's 5 weeks out. We think we know things in the NFL, but we don't always know things. And, of course, one of the reasons I don't like to look out in the future too far, injuries, and there's always a surprise as far as teams that are playing far superior than we thought they would. You take a team like Houston last year. We didn't expect them to be as good, and they turned out to be a playoff team. So when we look at Seattle, at least on paper right now, not looking very good as far as how many times they're going to be a favorite, which is why the spreadsheet likes them as the second option, at least if you're only taking a very small amount of future weight. Now, as you may imagine, we weigh this a lot more, then they're going to start becoming a little bit bigger or a little bit better pick. If we weight this at 100, suddenly they become the number one option. So look at your pool. I like to put this at 100 just for you guys, just because if you do have 100 entries in your pool, of course you can see that, but you also get to see on sort of a percentage basis. So like on a 100% basis, you'd want about 60% of your entries and 40% of your entries on Cincinnati, with about 60% on Seattle if you only wanted to play 2 teams. And again, that's how it works if you go with 3. If you go with 3, it's bringing New Orleans into the equation here if we go with 100% future value. So if you're in a large pool, I like to start at about 100%. New Orleans comes in because, again, New Orleans not really projected to be have a lot of future value here. So that's why we're starting to see them creep in. Tampa, similar situation. So what happens is the higher this number gets, it looks more towards this future value column than it does the win probability column. As this number decreases, then win probability becomes the utmost of importance. As you increase this, let's say to 200%, you're going to see now we don't even care about Cincinnati anymore. We're looking at these teams strictly because they've got very high numbers here for future value, meaning their future value is not very good, right? So I'll keep this at about 100. I just want to show you guys. You use this as you will for your pool. And one other thing, guys, we've done this so many years now. We've done the pool. You guys are amazing at asking questions, the interaction. This is the most popular show that we have here at the Sharp app. And again, if you guys have not downloaded the Sharp app yet, you can go ahead, do me a favor if you like this video. Of course, we'd love for you to subscribe here and to like these videos. Comment down below with any questions you have. Now, when you comment, make sure that you put in the comment exactly the rules in your pool. Now, week one, I get it. We could pick all the teams. But if there's any unique rules, let me know. I always help you guys out with where I think you should be going, or at least give you a couple of different options and some reasoning behind it. Takes a lot of time, but I love answering all your guys' questions. So be sure to leave comments down below, and we'll try to work it through together and get you guys to the finish line. So if you could do that, that would be awesome. I know a lot of you guys don't want to share these videos because you're probably going to share them with buddies of yours who are in survivor pools as well. So if someone's in your survivor pool, I get it. Don't share this video with them. But if you want to do me a favor, downloading the Sharp app, subscribing, that would more than make up for the fact that you cannot share this video with your buddies. So I get that, and I do appreciate the support. Let's dive back into what we've got going on here this week, and again on the spreadsheet. I want to show you the new thing that I've got. You guys may have noticed this final last column here called threshold, and what I've come up with is a formula here for based on the pick percentage. The key variables here are going to be pick percentage and win percentage, and it's going to come up with a threshold. That threshold number is the number I'm looking for. This is a win percentage number that I'm looking for in order to be able to fade that team. So this is not taking future value into account. What I'm looking at is what this is saying is you should only take a team. You should only go against Cincinnati if you could find a team that has a 72% chance to win or better. Again, this is not taking future value into account. Now, we don't have any teams with a 72% or better win percentage as of right now. This may change, and that's another thing, guys. I do these videos usually on Tuesday. They should drop on Wednesday. These numbers may change by the time we get to the weekend and by the time we get to Sunday. That's why ask questions. You're going to have injuries. We're going to have big line moves, big changes. Guys are going to be out. They're coming back in. Someone that we didn't think was going to play. All those sorts of things are going to change. So by the time Sunday comes around, we may have major differences. Probably not in week one, but we may have major changes as these weeks go on, and you're going to want to ask questions in the comments. I try and answer all of them, as I said. So back to this. Let's just look at this without looking at future value. We would say with no future value, again, it's kind of leaning on the fact that we want to take Cincinnati if future value means nothing. And again, that future value would mean nothing if you did not have very many people in your pool. Now, this is actually a formula, but I'm going to just type over it for a second. Let's just assume we had 30% taking Cincinnati. You can see that number is going to increase because now we're going to need an even better team because not as many people are taking them. If we go up to, let's say, 60% you anticipate of your pool taking Cincinnati, that number is going to drop down to 68.8. And then not even counting future value, we've got a lot of teams, or a couple of teams at least, that are going to fit that, and it's going to be a really smart move to get off of them. But as we stand now, let me just go back to my formula. We've got 41.7. That's what we're estimating right now. 71.9%, 72%, let's call it the threshold. I'm looking for teams above that. We don't have that quite yet. And this number is calculated now for every one of these teams. So when we look at future value, you keep coming back to Seattle. Now, in order to fade a team like Seattle, based on the ownership that they're getting, you're going to want a team of 68% or better. Now, how many teams are 68% or better? Really just the two teams that are being taken at a higher rate than Seattle is right now. So they look very, very strong here, Seattle, as a play, especially in large pools, because of the fact of this future value being so short. So I think my early analysis here, what I'm looking at, Seattle in large pools, I love. You're going to probably only take them once. Smaller pools for sure, we're going to be looking at Cincinnati. My initial thought when I first looked at it was Buffalo was going to probably be a play for me, but I think we've got enough future value here that they actually drop, right? So they have a higher win percentage, but they drop because they're owned almost double the amount of Seattle is. They drop to being just about equal here with Seattle. So I think when I account for future value, I think Seattle becomes a really strong play. I think these other teams, if you had 100 entries or something like that, you're going to want to, kind of diversify, sprinkle some of these teams in. But to me, this week, Cincinnati, the obvious choice. I think Seattle becomes the second choice in most pools, especially the larger the pool is. If the pool's kind of mid, maybe you could look at a Buffalo play, but I think kind of holding off on Buffalo this week might be the way to go. I think Cincinnati, again, Seattle, those are my two favorite teams here. New Orleans, I can get on board with, possibly, again, if you're sprinkling them in, if you have a lot. I've got one pool that I've got 48 entries in. I more than likely will have a few New Orleans picks in there. Tampa Bay, again, not a lot of future value, so if you wanted to throw one in. But I think looking at these numbers is going to just give us another tool to be able to help us with our picks. So Cincinnati at 41, 42%. I know a lot of people are going to look at that and say, boy, that's a really high percentage, and it is. But we still, all things without future value taken into account, 72% is what we're looking at for a team to be. Needs to be at over 72% for us to get some value, some on that team to be able to make a fade really viable. So what we're seeing here is in week one, not a lot. It's a little tougher to do a huge analysis in week one. We've all got our entries left. I think it's going to be dependent on your risk tolerance and what we're looking to do as far as the number of entries we have in the size of the pool we have. So hopefully that gives you guys a little background on what I'm looking at. If you're new, some background on how I go about survivor pools. There's some science to it. There is an art to it as well. And I'm hoping for you guys to be with us for the ride all the way through, all the way to the end, for you guys to cash and win your survivor pools this year. Remember, download the Sharp app, subscribe, like, and share this video with those not in your pool. I appreciate it, guys. We'll be back next week, hopefully surviving and advancing.